believed that New Orleans had a level of sin that was offensive to God. Blamed the people in New Orleans. And they were recipients of the judgment of God for that. There was going to be a homosexual parade there on the Monday that Katrina came, says this nut job.
He supports McCain.
This nut job is endorsing McCain.
That has nothing to do with McCain.
And if I may,
Someone supporting you is not the same as you choosing them for 20 years, time and time again.
John McCain.
Hey, what is that, Hannity and Colmes? Another fiery debate on The View as Joey Behar tries to compare the Reverend John Hagee's support of John McCain and Barack Obama's relationship with Jeremiah Wright. We continue now with Mark Steyn, Bob Beckel, and John Kasich. Mark Steyn, I understand the argument that Barack Obama went to the church for 20 years and all that, and thus knew Jeremiah Wright much better than John McCain knew Hagee. But John McCain did seek out Hagee's endorsement. Hagee then said that God had a hand in New Orleans' devastation. His city was about to have a gay parade. And John McCain has not denounced the endorsement of Hagee, but continued to say he's glad he had the support. So is there a double standard here?
No, there's no double standard. Look, I'm not going to defend a guy who thinks God sent Katrina to chastise New Orleans because the costumes in the gay parade were a little too revealing that year. I mean, that's absurd. But there's a difference between a guy who happens to be one of a zillion who's endorsed McCain and a fellow who was Barack Obama's pastor, the guy who married him, who was responsible for the spiritual education of his children, and the guy he took his best-selling book title from.
Him to Jesus, by the way.
Well, that's an interesting. No, that's an interesting thing. I think that's what's. This is a specific branch of Afrocentric liberation theology that is highly political in content. And to his credit, Jeremiah Wright is not backing off anything he said. He's who he is. He's who he's been for 20 years.
Mark, you can
for
hear
Obama to be surprised.
Hold on, one at a time. All right, John Kasich, go ahead. Or Bob, you wanted to talk. Bob Beckel.
Yeah, well, I was going to say is the Afrocentric ministries are all over the country. I mean, you can hear it on any given Saturday. I understand that. But the major point here is, with or without his relationship with Jeremiah Wright, assuming that this doesn't continue, that Wright doesn't continue on his tour, the idea that somehow you're going to beat a candidate because of a relationship with his former minister in the face of all of the problems that the Republican candidates have. Look, right now, John McCain, you've got the two Democrats just coming off the second battle at Gettysburg. You've got their negatives rolling high. You've got Wright and the rest of it, and yet he still loses to Barack Obama in national polls.
But
he can't do better than 45%.
John Kasich,
the problem is people do not vote for people on all these specific issues. They take the measure of the man. When John Kerry went windsurfing after he was nominated, people went, "Are you kidding me?" And then when he didn't fight the Swift voters and say, "Come on to New York and let's have a brass knuckles fight," it didn't matter what his positions were.
But John, why can't McCain do better than 45%?
Wait a minute, Bob. I think where Obama's been hurt here is that he does not have a resume, and people are questioning his judgment.
Hey, let me bring Mark Steyn
here. This is a problem for him. I mean, this is not a political debate. It's a fact.
Well, and let me go back to the original polls that we didn't talk about yet, and that is 70% of respondents, Mark, believe that, in fact, it has damaged the Obama campaign. 52% of people polled thinks Wright's message is anti-American. 47% think it's anti-white. I think those. It may not impact him in the general, for the nomination, but it will in the general election. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I think, because I think it exposes his candidacy as a fraud. I don't happen to agree with a lot of what John McCain does or Hillary Clinton does, but they are genuinely, in particular issues, maverick figures who reach across the aisle. The problem with Obama is that in his adult life, all his choices of associates seem to come from a very particular, narrow, far-left fringe.
Hang on, let me go to John Kasich. But, John, I want to go back to this one issue that I mentioned earlier we didn't expand on, and that is, you know, I think one of the most devastating things, first of all, that Reverend Wright said was when he brought up he's just a politician. He did what a politician does, which pretty much is saying, you know, that he knows where I was coming from, and I'm a pastor, and I'm out there telling the truth. I think that was devastating. He's basically saying he's disingenuous and not being forthright and honest with the American people.
Look, he thinks that Obama threw him under the bus by not defending him, so now he's throwing Obama under the bus. And here's the thing, Sean. Throughout this whole campaign, Obama's controlled the center of the ring. In a prize fight, the victory goes to those who control the center. Obama's been knocked off stride. He's been knocked out of the center of the ring, and he better recover and recover quickly.
Can I make one point with Mark Steyn? Mark, you said his relationships are all a bunch of left-wingers. That is one of the most, that's a McCarthy-esque statement. That is ridiculous to say that. Now, come on. We're going to have a second here. We're going to have a serious discussion here. We're going to have a serious analyst discussion here. Let's be analysts.
Don't interrupt people. That'll help. That'll help.
What are you talking about?
Let me ask you a question. 20 years he stayed in the church. This is where I think he loses everybody, and I don't think you can explain this away.
Loses everybody?
Well, loses many people according to this poll. And that is for 20 years he was there. There was nothing that he said at the National Press Club that contradicted the sound bites that we had been playing. He reinforced them, but only now Barack Obama wants to distance himself. Doesn't that show he is the quintessential politician, ambitious and doing what is expedient?
Listen, people know he's about the 70% who think he was damaged. I want to know about the 30% who don't think he was. I mean, they must be living in another planet. Of course it's hurt him. But the fact of the matter is, if you guys believe, and I know Case has been through a few campaigns, but Mark, I don't know about you, but I'll tell you, if you believe that this is going to defeat this guy in the face of this, then you're bordering on lunacy, or you're doing just sophomoric analysis.
People vote the man. Character is all.
Character matters.
This is April. This is April.
All right, guys, and a lot more to come, too. And thank you both. Thank you all.